Welcome to another Tuesday Tip how-to video. Hi, I'm Brad with University of Missouri Extension Master Gardeners of Greater Kansas City. And we're in the beautiful Laura Conyers Smith Memorial Rose Garden in Luce Park of Kansas City. Today we're going to be talking about growing roses with Rosarian John Riley of the Kansas City Rose Society.
Welcome, John. Our first question is, what does it require to be a Rosarian? Is this a real title, and what does it mean within the Kansas City Rose Association?
A Rosarian is anyone who cultivates roses, and usually for an occupation. So that's sort of a lowercase Rosarian. But uppercase Rosarian, consulting Rosarian, is a title given by the American Rose Society. It requires that you be a member of the American Rose Society. You have to be nominated by 2 Rosarians, consulting Rosarians. You have to study a book about the consulting Rosarian manual, and you have to attend 4 hours of classes and take a test. We have to pass the test, and then you can be a consulting Rosarian. You have to agree to provide answers to questions for no fee and make yourself available to the public. So that's what a consulting Rosarian is.
Very interesting. John, why did you become a Rosarian, and what is your history with working with roses?
I've become a Rosarian because I love to share my knowledge of roses with people, and I've grown roses for about 20 years.
Could you help us understand the kinds of roses? We've heard shrub rose, hybrid tea rose, climbing rose. What's the difference?
Roses are divided into classifications according to their growth habit and their heredity. Roses that were found in nature are called species roses. And interestingly enough, the species roses are only found in the northern hemisphere, none in the southern hemisphere. But roses that were hybridized before 1867 are called old garden roses. And we have several varieties in the garden that are like that. The Portland rose, the Bourbon rose. Any rose that was hybridized after that year, that was the year of the first hybrid tea, La France, or La France, depending on where you're from, I guess, are all modern roses. So all the roses that you mostly available in the nurseries, like the hybrid teas, the grandifloras, floribundas, those are all modern roses.
Oh. Now, a friend told me not to buy a grafted rose because she said that they change colors after a few years. Is that true?
What happens is the roses are grafted on a hardy rootstock, and for a couple of reasons. One is because it helps the hybridizer or the producers get it to market sooner, because they graft a cutting of the rose that they want on a rootstock that's already established. Also, it's a hardier plant when you put it in the ground. But what happens is the plant that you want dies back to the rootstock, and so the rootstock comes back, and you have whatever the rootstock was. Generally, in our area, it's a Dr. Huey, which is a red rose that only blooms once, so it looks like it's a different rose, but actually it's the rootstock.
So just to make sure I understand, if I go to the garden center and I buy a grafted rose that blooms with a white flower,
right, and
then for some reason the top part of that rose dies back, then the red Dr. Huey could be coming back from the roots.
That's exactly right. That's what you'll have.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Well, John, what qualifies as the perfect place to plant a rose?
You can plant a rose anywhere where there's at least 6 hours of sunlight and good drainage, and that's really about all that's required. So,
my next question relates to the soil of a rose. Do you amend it to improve the drainage?
Well, you want to have good drainage. So if your soil is too sandy, then the drainage will be too fast through it. And if it's too much clay, then the water will sit and it won't drain well enough. So when you plant your rose, you want to add some, generally in our area, it's mostly clay, so you'll want to add some organic matter. And so you have better drainage than we get with a natural clay that's in our area.
Okay, good plan. John, is there a perfect time of the year to plant roses? Some say fall, some say spring.
Well, you can plant roses as soon as you can work the soil in the spring. But you want to protect the rose from freezing temperatures. In our area, the latest freeze is about April 15th, so that's about the earliest that you'd want to plant roses. And you can plant all summer long as you keep them watered and protected, the new growth, up until about 12 weeks before the first freeze, which is about November in our area. So if you back that up, you can plant until about the end of August. So that's sort of your window for planting.
All right. Is there a secret to watering practices for roses?
Roses like a lot of water. They need about an inch of water a week. So get your rain gauge out. And if you don't get that inch, you need to water good once a week for about an inch equivalent of rainwater.
Okay.
How about fertilizing, John? Can I use a general purpose fertilizer, or should I be using something special just for roses?
You have to get a soil test first. I can't tell you how to fertilize your soil because I don't know what your soil is. And you can get them from the extension offices in either whatever state you're in. But if you don't have a soil test, you can use a balanced fertilizer, which is equal parts of NP and K, and that's okay. My soil tests, though, said I had plenty of potassium and phosphorus, and so all I really need is nitrogen. So I use ammonium sulfate, which is ammonia, which is nitrogen, and a little sulfur, and that lowers the pH too. Sulfur helps lower the pH, and roses like a pH of about 6 to 6.5. They need an acidic soil.
That makes sense. How often would you say that I need to fertilize my roses?
You can fertilize your roses as often as once a month. Some people, just once a year is enough. Now I exhibit roses, so I'm out there fertilizing once a month, sometimes more than often than that before a show. But if you fertilize in the spring and sometimes in the fall, that would be sufficient.
Great. Is it necessary for me to deadhead my roses? And if I'm deadheading, is there a certain way I should go about it? Deadheading
causes the rose to make a new bloom. There are some roses that clean themselves that don't require deadheading, some shrub roses. But most roses you'll want to deadhead to get the new bloom. And you want to deadhead right up until fall, and then you want to stop about August because you don't want to encourage new growth going into the winter. If you don't if you don't deadhead, you'll the rose that's pollinated will produce hips, which is the seed pod.
John, when is the best time to prune? Is it winter or spring?
Well, the best time to prune your rose is in the spring, but you can actually prune anytime during the year. You want to cut out any dead, damaged, diseased, cross canes or weak canes, and you want to do that throughout the year to make a healthier growth for the plant.
Okay. Well, what is the number one mistake that people make with pruning roses?
Well, the number one mistake is not to prune at all. Roses do better when they're pruned. Shrub roses, for example, you want to prune those to get the right shape for the space that it's in and the right size. So if your shrub rose grows a foot or a year and you want it to be 2 foot tall, in spring you cut a foot off and then you'll have a 1 foot tall or 2 foot tall shrub rose by the end of the year.
Okay.
Other roses like your hybrid teas, in the spring you'll want to cut out all but the maybe 3 to 5 of the strongest canes and cut them off about 18 to 2 feet high. And you'll say, oh my gosh, what am I doing to this rose? But they actually do better when they have those strong canes to start out.
I see.
Climbing roses, what you want to do with a climbing rose is cut 3 or 5 canes out each way and get them horizontal. Climbing roses, they'll make a bloom at the end of the cane if it's going straight up. But as soon as you lay that rose over past 45, it'll make shoots of blooms all along that cane. So the idea is to get those canes spread out and horizontal, and you'll have on a trellis or wall, and you'll have just a beautiful rose.
Can we talk a little bit about disease for roses? What are the most common diseases on roses here in our area?
The biggest disease is black spot. Almost all our roses get black spot here. Rose rosette, you probably heard about, is common and spreading. Not near as prevalent though as the black spot. Almost every rose is going to get black spot. There's other pests, the insect pests that we have. We've got rose midge and rose slugs and spider mites. So there's plenty of bugs and pests that will get the roses here. If you need to identify a pest, you can call me. I've got this. You can call the Kansas City Rose Society helpline, or you can call me as a consulting rosarian. The important thing is to identify that specific pest and just treat that pest, and not do a broad brush treatment.
Oh, that makes sense. Now back to black spot, which you mentioned. I know it will make my roses look ugly, but could it actually kill them?
The black spot doesn't infect the plant. It just kills the leaves that it's on. So you can lose several leaves on the plant and the plant will still survive and be fine. If you got a severe case and you lose all the leaves, then that can kill the plant. But it may even come back because, like I say, the black spot doesn't infect the plant.
So should I have a spray schedule for black spot? Should I spray in the winter?
You just spray, if you don't, in any black spot, you spray before you see it, and you spray every 7 to 10 days. And that's what I do as an exhibitor because I don't have any black spot on my leaves. But you can tolerate, roses have some disease resistance that you find from the nurseries around here, and they're bred for disease resistance. So you can lose about 25% or so of the leaves might be infected, but the rose will be fine and you don't have to spray. What you want to do is pick those off though and dispose of those infected leaves, and that'll decrease the amount of spread of the black spot.
Oh, that's good to know. Now you mentioned a little bit about rose rosette disease. I had a question about that. How can I tell rose rosette disease from weed killer damage or some new growth in the spring? I thought I might have rose rosette disease on one of my bushes, but it turns out it was just some new growth.
New growth. Yeah, most roses, new growth is the same color reddish that the rose rosette is, so that's pretty common to make that mistake. But normal new growth looks normal. The leaves are the right shape, got the right number of thorns along the cane, so it looks like it's just a rose, only it's just purple. Rose rosette disease, you'll know it because that's really ugly. You'll get thorns along the canes will be, instead of 1 or 2 in an inch, they'll maybe have 100 little fine little canes, little thorns. You'll get a large cane growing from a smaller one, which never happens in normal growth. You'll get 10 or 12 new canes coming from one little spot, and it's got this all withery looking leaves, like a witch's broom they call it. So rose rosette's pretty obnoxious and pretty easy to tell. So what about damage from herbicide? Something that's not new growth and something that's not rose rosette. There's a lot of different herbicides. It's hard to tell, but you do get some withering of the leaves perhaps. But generally, if it's not one or the other, new or the rose rosette, it's going to be damaged from the herbicide.
John, is there anything as a disease-resistant rose that I can buy?
There is. The knockout rose is a disease-resistant rose. Will Radler developed the rose that he called Knockout in 1999, and he's hybridized. He was an amateur hybridizer, and he developed that rose as disease-resistant. And it's really the only rose that I know of that's completely disease-resistant. The Knockout series of roses are the #1 selling rose in the world.
Is that right?
So people want disease resistance. Right. And other hybridizers are breeding disease resistance into their roses. But when they say disease resistance, it means that it's not quite as resistant. You'll get some black spot, but it won't completely lose all the leaves.
Okay. So what about these Japanese beetles, John? Is there a way for us to keep those from ruining our roses? And are there roses that might be more susceptible or more resistant to damage from those beetles?
I know the Japanese beetles are going to eat your roses and you really can't stop them. And they don't care. They eat all of them the same. But all that you can do is insecticides help a little bit, but if you'd have to spray every 3 or 4 days, and that's just too much insecticide. The thing to do is to go out and get a bucket of soapy water and shake the bloom with a Japanese beetle into the soapy water, and they'll die right away. Do that at 7 and 7. If you can, 7 in the morning and 7 in the evening, or one of those if you don't have time. But that's really the only control for those 6 weeks or so that they're around.
So speaking of shaking those beetles into some soapy water, that sounds like a integrated pest management technique to me. As master gardeners, we try to use integrated pest management, or IPM. Are there other IPM techniques that you would recommend in the rose garden?
Yeah, there are a few. You always want to identify the specific pest and treat for that pest. Some of the pests like aphids you can just spray off with a hard water spray. If you have spider mites, the same thing. Instead of using a miticide, you can go out every 3 or 4 days and just spray the spider mites off. But there are some natural, pesticides, but they're not really as effective. So I tend to use the ones that are labeled and use them as they're labeled.
Thanks.
Our last question, John, deals with winterization. Can you tell us the best practices to winterize our roses?
Yeah, in the fall, once the roses have gone dormant, in our area in Kansas City, that's about Black Friday. So my wife goes shopping and I go out and winterize my roses. We've had a couple of good killing frosts by that time, so they're dormant. You want to cut them down so you don't have any canes that blow in the wind. So that's generally down, about 2 or 3 feet tall. And then cover them with some kind of good mulch of some kind, dirt, or I use leaves. I bag my leaves, mulch my leaves and pile them up. And you want to pile the leaves or mulch about 1 foot high. And that provides a blanket for the rose over the winter, keeps the temperatures even, and that helps in the spring. They don't come out of dormancy too early, and it protects them from the freeze during the winter.
Very good. Thank you.
Well, this has been so much good information you've shared with us. I now feel confident that I could go out, buy a rose, and successfully grow it here in Kansas City. And I know that if I had questions or problems, I could call the Kansas City Rose Society, or I could get in touch with the University Extension Master Gardeners of Greater Kansas City. Do you have any final thought that you'd like to share with the viewers?
Just call KC. You can email us at kcrosehelp@gmail.com, and one of our consulting rosarians will answer any of your questions.
Perfect.
Wow, that was a lot of great information, John. Thank you very much. I did have a question. When you mentioned knockout roses are disease resistant, well, my knockouts are starting to not look very good. What's the problem?
Well, they could have rosette disease. And rosette disease is a virus. And there's no rose that's resistant to the rosette virus. The knockout roses, like this double knockout, are resistant to fungal diseases, like black spot.
Okay, thank you. Be sure to check out our Show More resources for more information about growing roses. And subscribe to our channel so you won't miss out on our next Tuesday tip videos. And if you like what you saw, please give us a thumbs up. Now, we can't promise you a rose garden, but we can help you navigate those thorny issues in growing roses. So, we will see you in the rose garden.
Volunteers from Master Gardeners of Greater Kansas City provide free, research-based answers to your yard, garden, and plant questions. So for any of your garden questions, call the hotline at 816-833-TREE. That's 816 833-8733 or send your email to mggkc.hotline@gmail.com.